Alright, time for Fullest House, first edition, where we are playing Vaettiheim. It is turn 48. And of course we have all of our summoning, so bringing in more birds and then bigger birds. I did say that I was going to hold off on this spell, but that was before I decided that we really need to expand our blood hunting operations, so we do need more patrollers, so we're going to waste some more air gems. Sadly, our transformation, I don't know what this is, but it does not look like size 5 or 6, so that doesn't really work out for us. We cast Vaettiheim, so we find a site. This is an underwater site searching spell. It searches all elemental paths. That looked like it might have been an earth gem. We're searching for some fire, which we miss with, bringing in our demons, and then doing our lesser horror castings. And they are both headed to the same province right here. So let's see what rolls we got and whether or not... Ooh, okay, we got some mantises and some brass claw horrors. And there is a Ziyedin here, or maybe this is just the commander. No, this does look like an abandoned Ziyedin, probably from some failed battle and retreats. They are difficult to collect, so I think we're going to be fine. Wasn't sure how many Ziyedin were here. If there were a lot, that's definitely dangerous, but especially because this one isn't going to get blessed, routes, and so we come away with that pretty easily. Definitely didn't need to do 2 lesser horror castings here, but lesson learned. And it does look like we bump with Utgard, although I think they're just going to get a free province here. Yeah, because we sent our scout in to grab that, and then there's no way our scout is going to be able to take on a Scrotty. Our mundane site searching does not work out for us. Our blood hunters doing decent. This is improving, so probably still need to increase these numbers. We're looking at about 80 here, which should support 2 castings of the 5 gates, so we can bring in demons a little faster, but considering we're using blood slaves for various other things, we can't realistically do that. We do need to increase this number, I think. So let's take a look at what Utgard sent in. Like I said, probably a Scrotty. Yeah, and we're just gonna, with a lifelong protection too. Yeah, this is fairly standard Scrotty kit. Now, they have decent natural protection, so, this armor here doesn't provide that much protection for them, but overall it leaves them in an okay place, but with the regeneration and their decent hit point pool, they usually do all right. And then, of course, pretty standard Frostbrand, Vine Shield combination, and we don't even have any province defense. In fact, interestingly, our scout must have been set to retreat, yeah, which is probably a good thing. Let's see, does our scout, he does survive. Not that that's a big deal. We can definitely afford losing a scout. And then it looks like Utgard attacks in Raghan as well with another thug. So we're definitely going to need to put some thought into how to kill these. Not that we're planning on tangling with Utgard anytime soon, but eventually I'm sure it'll happen. And, you never know. Utgard might decide to attack us. Not a ton of fire resistance. Not that we can really do much about that. A lot of cold resistance, which we're sad about. But yeah, these are going to be kind of nasty to deal with. Certainly not impossible. Like I said, the protection is relatively low, but pretty high defense skill. And it looks like Raghan chose not to patrol. This is looking like mostly province defense. And I think this Scrotty is going to do just fine because the Vine Shield is going to be really effective. It's interesting he threw a slime out there. Not sure if that's worth the fatigue, but I like seeing people try to switch it up and do different things. And this is, I think, a pretty preordained. They are getting some damage in. It does have some fatigue problems, which is interesting. Also, morale is solid, but, possibly something that we could attack with, because this Scrotty definitely, will take a lot of damage, and that will trigger some morale checks. But I think he's going to come away with it without any problem. Yeah, so Raghan's capital is now locked down. It didn't look like there was a whole lot in there in terms of troops, and we haven't really seen Raghan do much with their mages yet, so that could be it for them. And then these are the caves that we were thinking about raiding into that we'd held at one point. And yeah, Agartha is moving out with a ton of stuff, so it's good that we didn't actually raid into here. Our raiders are hanging out stealthily so they can view this. And it looks like Raghan decided to hang out with what they had in order to try to defend it, which is kind of interesting. But I don't think they're going to come away with this, considering I'm pretty sure this is the army that Agartha used to defeat that larger Agarthan force. And obviously it took some casualties, but Raghan has way less here. There's just a ton of skeletons. And we can handle skelly spam, right? We can do our own skelly spam, so not too worried about this, not too worried about Agartha, but this does work out for them really well. I don't think they're going to take any casualties. Maybe a few random guys from Ziyedins jumping into the back. Wow, actually a lot more casualties than I thought. So troop-wise, not too bad. This is fine, but to lose 7 of these necromancers, and these guys are pretty pretty expensive. Slow to recruit, quite possibly capital only. Like, that's really rough. Let's take a look. I'm guessing that Azieddin just got back there and then just went to town. And there is even some bodyguards here, it looks like. I wonder if there is a communion that goes down and that there's possibly some burnout. No, it doesn't really look like it. There's no astral here that I can see. Oh, wait, hold on. There's some astral here, but yeah, still no communion. So, yeah, not sure what happened here. Yep, Zieddins. So, Zieddins are really dangerous. Like, flyers are nasty. And dudes in robes. Maybe not enough bodyguards. Also, like, having a bunch of archers that are shooting, near your dudes in robes. That, I'm sure there was some friendly fire there, so really painful. So Gartha does come away with it, but it's a bit rough. It's just hard to avoid. These things do happen sometimes. And then we have another battle in Marignon's ongoing war. Yeah, so we saw this army. It's attacking forward, and I'm guessing that Marignon, it's just giving this province up. Yeah, we have some retreating mages. They are probably still reforming their army. Like I said, when you have to retreat off, even when you don't lose a lot of troops, it still takes a turn or two, at least, to collect everything and, just get it back in functional order. So I think Marignon is definitely going to be on the defensive here for a little bit. And then we attack Raga somewhere. I'm not actually sure where this is. Oh, right. This is our army moving forward. So yeah, we're not going to come away with too much in this Raga war, but that's okay, right? We were pretty late to the party, so I think that's fair. And, we have plenty of other things that we can be doing. But I also think that this is enough stuff that nobody's going to be, like, thrilled to be coming after us. Nice, and it looks like the fort that Joman jumped on top of is Miklin. I'd forgotten that. So they're going to come away with a capital, which is pretty good, because this might be the only province that they take off Raga, maybe one or two others. And there's not a lot in here. So yeah, I think they're going to come away with this without too much trouble. I do believe these are still some mercenaries. Had these mercenaries for a while, and of course the wall archers, and always the dudes in robes. And then, yeah, they have the flying mercenaries, which are excellent in a storm situation. So I think this is going to work out for Joman really well. But there's not a ton of resistance. I think Raga has pretty much given up here at this point, which, in their defense, right, they are fighting a lot of people. This is a rough situation. I think no matter what they would have done, they wouldn't have come away with it. But I don't know. If it was me, I certainly would have tried to pick somebody to convince next time, don't join the coalition against me. But we have our own problems. Demons have manifested. This definitely feels like a Misfortune 3 thing, and there's almost no chance that our province defense will stop those demons. Of course, the yellow mold. This is in a new location now, I think, so always the yellow mold. There's going to be plenty of mold. Brigands. This is in the ocean. I don't think we get a lot of money out of there anyway, so that's okay. This is kind of rough. Luckily, we didn't have a ton of Dominion here anyway, but this is in Abyssia, right? And so we would really like the Smolder Cone to cool it. And I doubt that this is going to help, so that's unfortunate, but, it is what it is. This is what happens when you take full misfortune. Speaking of full misfortune, here's not actually very many. This is pretty lucky as far as demons manifesting goes. So we have, like, some chance here. Very unlikely. I think aren't storm demons... Yeah, they're ethereal, so it's going to be very difficult for our province defense with their mundane weapons. And, lightning is really dangerous, but it is a little inaccurate, especially now that they're shooting closer. But, right, eventually somebody gets through. Ethereal still is only a 75% chance for mundane weapons to not hit. So, of course, I say there's no way our province defense will stop the demons, and then they stop the demons. So, good work, guys. Who knew that maligning your province defense was the best way to get them to perform? This is our scout getting patrolled out on top of Pangea, so I think Pangea is kind of just digging in here. Been waiting for them to try to raid out, but yeah, and sadly, we wouldn't have been able to retreat anyway with all the flyers. And then, of course, always with the patrolling, and I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Probably the most important thing this turn is I have decided to turn this northern army towards Pangea's capital, but more importantly towards Pythium, since that's really who we're probably going to have to be fighting. And I have started moving a lot of our raiders over in that direction. We're also recruiting a lot of Wolf Brothers here in Abyssia, which we'll be, sending up in Pythium's direction most likely. So yeah, deciding to commit heavily to Pythium. We'll see, since we're planning on antagonizing Gath at the same time. So maybe we won't antagonize Gath immediately. On the other hand, like, what are we going to do with this army? We are building up, some demons. Hopefully we're getting, let's see, 2 casts this turn. Yeah, 2 casts of the 5 gates. So still a little unsure about antagonizing Gath as we send stuff in the other direction. On the other hand, Gath isn't quite done with this Raga situation. And I have a feeling that this Agarthan army is going to jump on top of this throne. Obviously, like, we could have a go with our raiders, but our raiders wouldn't be able to stand up to really any of these armies in the area. So we'd probably just lose the bump and then, maybe start a war against Agartha, which I'm not really interested in. Right, the less of this territory that we take, the more likely it is that the people that just moved in are going to, fight each other for it. So if we push really hard, we might end up gaining a couple extra enemies, whereas I think we've left ourselves in a pretty good situation. Like, we're really close to a couple capitals and a couple thrones. Obviously, it would have been nice if we could have gotten this province, but we're not all that far away from this throne if this is, how this border stabilizes, which we'll see. Raga definitely has enough stuff here now that they could choose to raid out, but, with an Agarthan army staring them down, probably not. But when things get to the end, people do unpredictable things all the time, but even more so, I find, when, people get cornered into a last stand situation. So we'll see where that goes. We do see that Pythium is massing, so they're probably going to beat us. They're going to jump on top of Pangaea first, and there's definitely some risk because we're planning on trying to combine, right, from 3 different provinces. That said, I think this army can probably take I don't know. This is a lot of Serpent Cat frags. We probably will switch back to our fatigue play, Rigor Mortis. Since I think that's going to work out like pretty well, and we're a lot less, the battlefield's going to be more open, right? We're not going to have to worry about a choke. So there's still some risk of, what happened on top of Abyssea happening like in a field battle on top of Pangaea, but much less risk. I do think if we're able to combine everything that we have, I think we can beat this pretty handily. Of course, Pangaea is full heat scales, and it is spring, right? So this is heat 2. Our Rimvetti are really not going to like that. So we do need to be mindful of that, but we have enough mages and enough mundane troops in these groups that I think will be okay. And I also think that we have we're about to hit Serpent's Blessing, so we will have Serpent's Blessing ready for this battle. Definitely relevant since we've seen Pythium use that against Pangaea before. So that's probably the majority of it. Like I said, a lot of our raiders, unfortunately, our raiders are relatively fast, right? Like, yeah, here's a fellow who does not have a hag in tow. And he can move relatively rapidly. Now we're going to build a lab also in this forest. So we're recruiting hags here. So it might be a situation where, our goads are actually the ones that like kind of move around between theaters, and they just, leave the hags behind. For now, we are like slow moving a couple of these groups together. Like, we'll see how that goes. But now that I'm kind of looking at this and thinking about it more, it might be a situation where it's like, well, maybe we should just send these hags like, back. Maybe they can live in Abyssea for a little while, or we'll probably want to build a fort here in this province. Like, we need a fort somewhere around here to help control this. We don't really have a ton of infrastructure up in this direction, and we definitely need to correct that. So we could maybe just have the hags hang out there, and then when we need to do raiding in this area in the future, they'll be available for us, and then our goads can just pick up different hags that are closer, that we've recruited in the area where we want to do our raiding. But for now, we just started recruiting hags here. We don't even actually have any, so we're gonna bring them along. There's a couple that lost their companion. Actually, no, only one of them that lost their companion. No, excuse me, there was 2. That's another interesting point. Sometimes, just a little bit of movement difference, right? So this guy can make this 2 province move because he's got 20 move. This guy has some wolf brothers as bodyguards, and they're actually slightly lower map move. So not going to be relevant too much, right? 18 versus 20, like usually you won't notice that, but it can matter. So a point against the bodyguard groups in that case, although I do think it provides a little more staying power, and I think that's probably my preference going forward, but we'll continue to experiment as we raid people. Otherwise, let's see, mage recruitment we may have had to cut. Nope, I take that back. Full mage recruitment, which is very nice. Not recruiting too much in the way of troops. Like I said, we're recruiting some raiders up here in Abyssia, and then we're recruiting our Rimveti. I've actually turned on repeat recruitment there for them. I think they're going to be useful enough, maybe just from a defensive standpoint. At this point, with their stubby little legs, trying to move them around on foot to a lot of our conflicts it's getting prohibitively time consuming. And then, oftentimes we're fighting in heat, which they don't really like. But defensively in our own territory with cold, they're much, much better, and it's easier for them to get there. If we get another Astral 2 caster, and possibly, when we shut down our Lesser Horror casting, if we ever shut down our Lesser Horror casting, and we need to get our hands on Earth Astral, the Earth Astral Crosspath. So we're needing more Spectres. Another reason the Throne of Death calls to me. But when we get enough Death Gems, we'll have another gamble on another Spectre. We do need Earth Astral. But once we can get the other Astral booster that requires that crosspath, we will be able to get Astral 4, and so we'll be able to gateway units around, which will help a lot in terms of moving our Rimveti out to places where they're useful, even if they don't like going to those places. And then in terms of our Monkey Destroyer, sadly, I was not able to forge armor. The Seath Paths, I feel like, are not fantastic. I mean, there's some good gear, definitely, but I often find myself looking for like good, armor, helmets, shields. And so I really wanted Armor of Knights on this person, but we just didn't quite have the Earth Casters. I think if I had just, we're not going to get the discount anyway, because our Pretender this turn, I was going to have him forge an Armor of Knights, but I was like, that's too sad. An Earth 1 could do that. It's not worth the 3 gems. The turn was not worth the 3 gem, or 2 gems. 1 gem? Excuse me, yeah, it's 1 gem from the Steel Ovens, so like 1 turn, definitely not worth 1 gem. I think we had this lady last turn. Maybe not. Probably could have gotten a hold of some site searcher. I don't know, I say that, but oftentimes they're, out and not at a lab. So anyway, we were not able to forge the armor last turn, so we're forging it this turn, and then they'll be ready to go in. At that point, it's really just a question of, like, do we want to antagonize Gath or not? We're also going to try to sneak in our point buffer here. Assuming that she manages to live, she is dying, so she doesn't have that many more turns left, but she will be able to, like, sneak an attack across this bridge. Of course, it has warmed up, so this river is no longer frozen. Which means we'll be attacking in with no available retreat routes, although we'll probably leave, we'll have to leave the flying boots on if we want to make this attack, and so I think that will open this up, at least for that unit as a retreat route. And then of course there's the possibility that we bump into Gath's thugs and or some of their units, and we're not really going to be set up to deal, especially not with all of these thugs. So it's definitely a significant risk, and I'm not sure, I don't know, we'll see. It is going to be 3 turns before we have to fight Gath, so we'll be able to put together another army by there. Although we have somewhat drained this region of mages, so there's not like a ton of mage support that we're going to be able to quickly provide to another army here. But we'll figure it out, and we'll have a ton of demons, so we'll probably still have a go. That is, of course, assuming that Gath doesn't beat us to the punch by jumping in this turn. So yeah, we are teleporting out our Lesser Horror casters. They're headed over to Abyssia, because we're going to be wanting to send Lesser Horrors up here against Pythium. Our god is also cloud trapezing into Abyssia, mostly just because he can't reach this throne. And we just want to site search here, and then maybe claim. If I stay strong, we won't claim. If I'm feeling weak, then we'll probably claim. Not sure how worth it is. Like, if you're going to site search with your like a Rainbow Pretender, definitely Thrones are the way to go. Although this is in a farmland, so fewer magic sites. So yeah, that's not exactly ideal. But the other nice thing is we do kind of need Dominion pressure here, especially if we're not going to claim this throne. And our god will provide like a good amount of Dominion pressure up here, and it'll also get them off our border. It's a bit rude, I think, to leave your god on the border with people. We can see that Mirignon's actually having a bit of trouble with, I wonder if they've claimed this throne. Yeah, they have 2 throne claims, so I do think that they have claimed this throne. But yeah, they're having a bit of trouble with their Dominion, and at least some of that is due to our god just hanging out next door. We have valid reasons for it, but he's forged us most of what we need right now. And he has been hanging out in this province, like unhidden, right on the border for a long time. So yeah, I'm just getting him out of here. Speaking of that, we are forging a shade mail, so that'll help, keep him stealthy. And then otherwise, just some limited forging. We're forging someone a shield. I think this is just for one of our mages. Arrows are a bit of a problem for some of our Veti. And then, of course, always with the dowsing rods, we definitely need to up our blood hunting, although we do need to shut down this. You can see just one turn of blood hunting with no patrollers going, and that really raises the unrest quickly. So we're just going to preach here a little bit, and then, patrol down this unrest. Also, like our, better blood hunter has to cast Blood Feast here to fix the disease problem. So once she does that, she'll come back, and hopefully all the unrest will be down, and we can keep it down with this bird group. But these birds are not fantastic patrollers because they are undisciplined. Normally, flyers are pretty good patrollers because they have good map move, but undisciplined units not great at patrollers. So this isn't a super efficient way of setting up patrol groups. But it's kind of what we have the gems available for. So yeah, we'll see. We may spend some gold here to beef this patrol group up and keep this blood hunting operation going, and probably going to be looking for another place to set up yet another blood hunting operation. I think probably the only other thing of note is our big birds are moving up here, so they'll provide siege strength because hopefully we'll be sitting on top of Pangaea soon. And we're also going to move the Ice Devil up here because sure, why not? We'll hopefully be getting him some armor as well the following turn. So yeah, but this is more or less what his kit is going to look like. The Hellsword, I believe, is two-handed weapon, so no shield for this fellow. And yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 48. All right, and since it is the start of a new year, it is time to do our tour of the F keys, F1, for the nation overview. If I have counted this right, we are at 49 provinces, which I feel like is in a pretty good place. I do think our rate of growth has slowed down a bit, but we'll be able to see that better from the graphs. Our site searching is in a pretty good place at this point, I would say. We do have a lot of low-level searches and quite a few paths, which isn't ideal. So, we'll want to work on fixing that. But otherwise, we've searched, most places in most paths, fire and earth being, kind of our weakest in terms of site searching. But that makes sense because, we don't have those paths nationally, so we've been relying on indies for that. Blood, we're notably behind in. Again, I just don't do a lot of blood. I do know that there are very few blood sites, so it always kind of feels bad to me, when you're site searching for blood. But the blood sites that are out there are really impactful, so it's probably still worth searching, especially considering we're planning on focusing. We're already doing a lot of blood stuff. We're planning on doing more blood stuff. There's really no excuse for this. I should fix this, so this is a good wake-up call. And then, of course, we do have to scroll. Like a lot of this is like our newer lands, so obviously we do have some site searching still to do. Although, again, some of this, right? Like, do we really need to search this for a bunch of paths? Clearly, this has been searched already, at least in a few paths. And what's the likelihood that we're going to find that this is going to be a 5-site province? So we probably will still search in the paths that haven't been clearly searched for. Because you never know, right? But I do think we're kind of at the point in the game where as long as your opponents have been reasonable about site searching their lands, doing more site searching on top of that is definitely going to be a case of diminishing returns. And I do think we've kind of seen that in like a couple of the last turns where we've done quite a bit of site searching, but haven't really found all that much. And a lot of that has been taking place in lands that we've taken from other people. And speaking of graphs, here they are. Here is our provinces graph, and this is probably, I bet you this lines up with our army graph dropping precipitously. This is probably our loss on top of Abyssia, and then Pangaea was able to raid out fairly effectively, and we lost a lot of ground, but we did recover, and after a couple small setbacks, we've been able to push our province count up quite a bit. So yeah, I'd say that is headed in the right direction. Forts, similarly, we've been moving up at a reasonably steady clip. As ever, I think the fort count is okay. They're never in the right place somehow. Or maybe it's just that you can't have too many forts. Income, similarly, dip. This is probably also related to the Abyssia situation. But overall has been headed in the right direction, although recently we've kind of tapered off for whatever reason. Gem income, again, like a couple drops, but moving in the right direction. One thing that we have not done is really thought about, other than Illwinter, I don't really have any plans for globals. That's probably not the greatest. Mother Oak is definitely, a consideration for Vaettiheim, and just kind of one that I blew. And now at this point, I don't think it's worth antagonizing Utgard over. And they've probably built up a decent stack of nature gems. So it's probably not worth fighting over. But that would be a decent global for Vaettiheim to go for, because they do like nature gems. Research, at least moving in the right direction. This is probably lower than a lot of players, because we've been mobilizing a lot of mages pretty much all game long. But it is at least going up, in the right direction. Dominion, we really struggled there for a while, and then for whatever reason we had, pretty solid boost there, more or less moving in the right direction. But there's still a couple of our provinces, especially down where we're building that fort near Patala, where we still don't, have our Dominion in there, and there's relatively strong enemy Dominion in that location. So we definitely have a bit more work to do here. And then army size. Yeah, so this is no doubt our first loss on top, our only loss on top of Abyssia, or did we lose this storm? I can't remember. No, we just barely pulled it out. But yeah, so this is the loss outside of Abyssia, and then this was our storm that, went okay-ish, but it wasn't great. But we have recovered in both cases. You can sustain losses as Vaettiheim, definitely. And then ascension point wise, we only have the one throne. You can see Raghan was really pushing hard, and then just kind of dropped off. And we can see that Utgard is doing pretty well from a throne standpoint, and which is dangerous because they're doing pretty well overall otherwise, right? They're in the same place throne wise as Marignan, but I think Marignan's overall position is weaker. So yeah, we're probably still a little too early to be worrying about ascension points too much, unless somebody's really making a push for it. So that covers graphs. Now on to the Hall of Fame. Sadly, we still do not have anyone up here. Quite a few possible mummies here, dead heroes. Otherwise, a lot of usual suspects. We have quite a few Scrotty here, and then also we have some Phlegron tyrants, one of whom is still living, but the other has died. But not a ton of super combatants yet still, I would say, because there's I think this guy's a mercenary, and I don't know who Ronson is. Yeah, he's a cave captain. His heroic battle prowess. I probably wouldn't send him alone against the stack, and then there's still some mercenaries up here, and a Doom Priest somehow made it in here. So I don't know if that's just this room, or also the fact that it's late age, and potentially there's just fewer chassis available. But yeah, while some of these are looking impressive, others, not so much so. And as far as Pretenders of the World go, we have 14 remaining humans playing, 2 AIs, so Raghan has gone AI, I missed that, so we don't really need to worry about, a human that's cornered doing unpredictable things, we just need to worry about the AI doing unpredictable things. But that's fine, Raghan is definitely down to it enough that setting themselves as AI, totally acceptable. And then in terms of remaining human players, I would say everyone is still at least somewhat a contender, with the exception of Pangaea, who's, just down to their cap circle. I think also, Patala Pythium is not in a great place, and yeah, actually Patala obviously also down to, just a single capital, so really more 12 functional nations left, with 2 city-states, and then one of those functional nations is kind of semi-functional, definitely still a player, but, they've already subbed out, and it's our host that's playing as Pythium, so maybe 11 and a half nations. And then on to research. Could be worse, has been worse recently. We have that army that just started researching. So according to the guide that, I kind of use as my rule of thumb, 2,000 would be average at this point. So we're not in the worst category. That would be 1,000 research would be, kind of low, as low as you'd want to be. So we're at least, well over that, at least when we have more of our mages researching. But, we're still not hitting average, which is not great, especially since it's a little deceptive since we've been significantly lower than this for at least the last couple turns. And then, of course, I've split my research atrociously. since clearly that's how I like to play. I don't know what, I never really plan on it being split this evenly, but I do like lots of options. I mean, there's definitely a lot to be said for just tunneling, down a specific school for some really powerful spell. On the other hand, if you spread your research out like this, you end up having access to a lot more spells kind of at all points of the game. So I like having options, clearly, and our research is really spread out. We only have 1 7, which is not great at this point, but we're also really close to a second 7. Like, we certainly, could have a 9 by now if we really wanted it. I don't think we really desperately need it yet. And of course, now that we're a blood nation, my research is even more split than normal, because normally I can at least just ignore blood magic, but alas, we've spread it into blood magic here for this game as well. So that covers research. On to globals. Pretty light in terms of global enchantments for this game, for whatever reason. So Utgard is the only one holding probably 2 of the weakest globals in the game. Not that they're bad, just that they're not incredibly powerful, and they're the only ones that are up. So for whatever reason, this room is not really focusing on globals. For us, casting Illwinter, I think, is just going to paint too much of a target on our back, and I'm just not quite ready to do that. We'll see. I haven't really ever painted a target on my back, at least not one this large, or as large as Illwinter will be in multiplayer. So yeah, again, not really sure when to pull the trigger on that. At some point, we'll just have to go for it. I do think we're going to need to improve our blood hunting situation in order to get enough blood slaves to actually keep it up, because Illwinter will absolutely have to eat some dispel attempts. So that was the global situation. This is the gem income situation. Looking decent. Kind of odd, to be honest. We really are not sure what to do with the astral pearls. Still have to figure out a plan for that. That is our greatest income and is not really what we were aiming at, but yep, we just seem to have a lot of astral sites in our lands. Otherwise, also weirdly, we have a really good air income. This is, of course, partially because we have the Throne of Air, but we also just seem to have a lot of air sites in our lands. And then we have a decent death income, a decent nature income. Our earth income is terrible, which is a bit sad. Our water income is really low, considering that this is like a national path for us and something that we've done a decent amount of site searching in. So we just got kind of unlucky there, I feel like. And then our fire gem income is like moderate. It's actually pretty decent considering, how little site searching we've done. At least part of this is because we hold Abyssia as capital. But overall, a decent haul for gems. And here's our magic item treasury. Not too many items stacked up, which is good. A couple random water boosters here that I probably should be handing out. A random nature booster. This is just for our next army that'll head out. Morale help. Some penetration items that haven't found homes yet. This is so we can foul vapors and keep some of our indie mages alive. So yeah, just a random grab bag of forging. Really, I think I need to focus more on like forging sets of gear that we can then, pull off commanders and then store together and then throw them on commanders like when we need them. So that is definitely not what we're looking at here. And then this is the throne situation. We kind of already talked ascension points. No one's really too close to winning yet. And I don't think there's any thrones here, that are going to completely change how the game plays. The Crystal Throne is definitely nice for Utgard because it provides that Earth astral crosspath that we're looking for, and I don't believe they have it either. Of course, they're probably looking at the Throne of Air thinking, hey, that would be kind of nice for us. So yeah, it's generally good to have thrones, although there are some that are kind of questionable. And that covers our tour. So we will check these screens again at the start of the next year.